Because for some of us, our parents have been a real mixed bag. Some good and some bad. A little good, a lot of bad. A good, bad, back and forth and back and forth. You know, for some of us, this is a lot harder than it looks like right up front. This really shouldn't surprise anyone, since we live in a fallen world full of sin, full of sinners, including our parents. Now, I'm going to allow for the possibility that somebody in the room here today has had the closest thing physically possible to perfect parents. I'm going to allow for that. I'm glad for you. And deeply, deeply jealous. Deeply jealous, to the point where maybe a prolonged confession is going to be necessary later, but we're going to leave that for now. Don't feel the need, please don't feel the need, if that's you, to identify yourselves. Don't do that, right? You can simply sit back and reminisce on your perfect childhood full of flowers and bunnies and candy and toys. Just do that on your own, while the rest of us are going to deal with real life. No need to identify yourself. Today, I'm going to read today's passage from Exodus 20, and then I'm going to define a few terms. We're going to look at what the Bible says about honoring our parents. I just want to note, this is a little PSA for the folks that are going to show up on Wednesday. I'm going to be showing a lot of references today. You're going to see them up on the screen. We're going to be talking about those references on Wednesday. In fact, that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about how have the scripture references that you looked up and you read on your own, how have they shaped your idea about how you are going to honestly honor your parents. That's what we're going to do today, do on Wednesday. And then we're going to spend some time in prayer, because we need prayer. Okay, Exodus 20. I'm going to read 1 through 17. For the Wednesday night folks, you would expect James to say, I got it, because he's always on it, but, not calling you out, brother. All right. And God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God, who brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything on heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sins of their parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your town. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Verse 12, honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. The word of the Lord. So let's give a little context. Let's do some definitions first, and then we're going to dig back in, all right? This is the Ten Commandments. God is telling Israel what to do, and in the process, revealing himself to them. These are not suggestions. These are not the 10 things that you probably should do as long as it's convenient and it really doesn't hurt you too much. And if you remember it, no, these are commands. This is God telling the Israelites what they need to do. First, he talks about himself. He reminds them of what he's done for them. He reminds them that he's brought them out of slavery. He then tells them how people should interact with him. He tells them, this is the relationship that you and I have, how they should be respectful, to not have any gods before him, no graven images or objects that you worship, right? Nothing fashioned that you bow down to, not taking the Lord's name in vain, keeping the Sabbath holy. So that's what starts us in the Ten Commandments. Then God turns and instructs the Israelites how to interact with each other, right? Honor your father and mother, don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't steal, lie, and don't covet. A sin of attitude, right? Not just what you do, but a sin of attitude. Out of this second set of 6, honoring our parents stands out as the one which has a promise attached to it, right? Let's read again. Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Remember that this is Moses giving the 10 Commandments to the Israelites. They're in the wilderness. How many of them got to the promised land? Anyone? Most of them didn't make it because they lived 40 years in the wilderness. Why? Because they disobeyed God. God's not playing, God's not messing around here when he's giving the 10 Commandments to them. This commandment that we're focusing on today, honoring our father and our mother, is repeated and quoted other times in the Bible. We see it in Deuteronomy 5:16. You see all these, right? Matthew 15:4, 19:19, Mark 10:19, Luke, Ephesians. Notice that as you dig into these, one of the things you're going to find is that it also includes the negative command. We find in the Bible the negative command that's found in Leviticus 20, verse 9. Anyone who curses his father and mother is to be put to death. God's not playing about this. He really means this. This is not optional for us. Jesus takes this even further when he calls out the Pharisees. Remember, Jesus curses the Pharisees. Like, he's not messing around with the Pharisees. He shows it that the Pharisees are encouraging adult children to neglect their parents in order to enrich themselves. Doesn't mess with that, okay? So if this is so important for us, this is seen in the Bible over and over again, what is it that we're supposed to honor? Parenthood is a unique relationship. We notice that it's a very specific relationship that's called out in these verses in this command. Both positive and negative commands. Why? Why is parenthood so unique? It's because parents are called to a unique set of tasks. So let's look at what parents are supposed to be doing for their children according to the Bible. All right? This is what do parents do according to the Bible. You're going to be looking all these up. You know when to come. All right? Number 1, parents are supposed to provide for the physical needs of their children. That's in 1 Timothy 5:8. Number 2, parents are supposed to teach their children about God. Deuteronomy 6:6-7, great example of that. Number 3, parents are supposed to model God's relationship to their parents. And we see that both in Psalms, and then we'll see it again here in Matthew in a second. But we are to model, parents are supposed to be modeling the relationship to God to their children. Number 4, parents are supposed to discipline their children. That's a favorite one, I can tell. Parents are supposed to discipline their children. Proverbs calls it out twice. And Proverbs specifically says, makes the connection here, right? If you love your children, you discipline them. If you hate your children, you do not discipline them. All right? Doesn't leave a whole lot of wiggle room here. Makes it pretty clear. Parents are to discipline their children. That's a whole sermon in itself. We are not going to go there today. We're going to press on. No, we're sure. Thanks for that invite. Number 5, parents are supposed to provide for the emotional security of their children. This is in Colossians and Ephesians. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Okay? We're not to be frustrating our children, making them feel unsafe or unwanted. Let's push in here a little bit and simply point out that fatherhood is especially unique in it's the human relationship that God uses to model his relationship to us. And we see that in the Lord's Prayer, which starts out, "Our Father, which art in heaven." So fatherhood is focused on by God when he is using that relationship, that parental relationship, to illustrate something to us. So we see now that the tasks of good parenting are actually assigned by God. These are not simply the choice of a person or persons. It's not like people stood up and said, well, yeah, we got these kids. I guess we should feed them. And they probably need clothes because, it's only so much longer. I want a naked kid running around. So, I probably should do that too. No, God's command is for good parenting. God commands good parenting, right? And God's command to honor our parents is reflecting God's command for parents to care for their children. It's a reflection, right? We see God's command to honor reflecting God's command to care, right? The two are reflecting each other. Now, I want to pull up here for a second because that's the favorite thing that Yvonne loves every time I preach, right? She says, boy, a good pull-up. Sometimes it's important to identify the person who acted as our parent. Now, that might be a biological parent. That might be an adoptive parent. That might be a mentor. That might be a family member. Might be an older sibling. Might be an auntie. Might be a grandparent, right? We need to identify that person that fulfilled that role in our lives. Parenthood, get this, parenthood is an identity from behavior. Parenthood is an identity from behavior. We ask who my mother was, who was acting as my mother, right? That's important because sometimes the person that was acting as my mother also wasn't doing what they needed to do for me. So all of this setup, this command that God's not playing, he really means it, and this set of commands that God gives to parents that reflect that command, all of this then comes and brings us to this central question. We are commanded to honor our parents who have a clear job in our lives, both a physical job and a spiritual job, but we are living in this world where our parents fail. Sometimes really, really badly. Not just neglect, not just abandonment, but abuse and fraud and lying and stealing and all of it. That's where we live. The same people we are commanded in the 10 Commandments to honor have broken the rest of those 10 Commandments on and to us. We're in the commandments here. These aren't optional things. We're supposed to be honoring them, and they have broken the rest on us. Now what? Now what? How do I honor my sinful parents? How can I be obedient towards God for people who have been disobedient to God? Now what? Let's start with what honoring sinful parents does not look like. It does not look like this. Anyone? Anyone? Oprah? Anyone? You're killing me here. Anyone at all? The Nile. Denial. Come on. Killing me. Denial is not a river in Egypt. Come on. Killing me. Danae wants to change her answer. Pretty sure about that. Okay. All right. Maybe you were all thinking about bunnies. Okay, all right. Okay, it's not denial. In all seriousness, it's not denial. We're not able to say, oh, my parents weren't really that bad, when they really were. And we know it because we remember it. And we have the scars to prove it, just in case we were to forget about it, even for a little minute. We know. We do not have the capacity. We do not have the authority. We do not have the capability. We do not have the right to call something good, which God has clearly said is wrong. It doesn't matter. Yes, I know. But it doesn't matter that we're trying to do something good to honor our parents, because when we lie, we lie. We can't keep one of the commandments by breaking another command. When we lie, we lie. We can't just say, yeah, but it made me stronger, or I'm a better parent now, or it was a character building experience, or I'm more grateful, or any one of the 1,000 ways we try to diminish the loss. We can't do that. Right? Furthermore, let me be very, very, very clear. We cannot honor our parents by accepting ongoing or continued abuse. Honoring is not silent. That is not how we honor our parents. So that is what it does not look like. So let's ask the question, what does honoring our parents look like? And I'm going to go broadly first, and then we're going to dig into some practical ways that we're going to do this. What does honoring our parents look like? In situations that are very tough, we are honoring our parents when we set correct and healthy boundaries. Okay? When we say that, for now, this is as far as I can go. This is as much as I can do. This is what I'm willing to say. Right? We have to set correct and healthy boundaries. It may appear that we're being dishonorable as far as other people see it. It might appear that, but the appearance doesn't make appropriate boundaries wrong. The fact that it looks that way to somebody else doesn't make what you know to be the right limit incorrect. Honoring our parents calls for balance. It calls for discernment. And it seems supernatural. It seems beyond us. That's because it is. If we're not exactly sure what we're supposed to do to honor our parents, to set healthy boundaries, to be in obedience, then James 1:5 says that we should ask God for wisdom, who gives generously to all without finding fault. God's not going to say, why are you asking me that? That's a dumb question. God doesn't do that. Other people do that. Maybe even your parents do that. But God doesn't. He doesn't fault us for asking him for wisdom. Furthermore, as we read in Psalm 139, 23 and 24, we should ask God to search us, to test our anxious thoughts, to see if there be any evil in us, and to expose it and to correct it so that we can be made right, so that we can be led in the way everlasting. When we honor our parents, we have to have balance. We have to have discernment. How do we do this practically? That sounds good. That sounds like we go to God. That's good. But how do we do this practically? Because we're going to have to answer this practically speaking. This is going to have to be a practical thing for us. I'm going to give you 3. Number 1, also known as A. We have to acknowledge the good. There are very few of us whose parents did absolutely nothing good or right. Very few. You're the exception that proves the rule if that's you. Most of us can come up with something that our parents did that helped us. If our parents did nothing right, we likely didn't survive our childhood. Right? We need to acknowledge the good that our parents did in order to speak the truth and to speak it in love. That's Ephesians 4:15. Now I need to pull up again here. I know Yvonne's happy. This is a special note to those whose parents have abandoned them. And I know that's hard. Right? God, however, isn't shocked by your parents' behavior. He saw your situation before the world began. And get this, he hasn't allowed your parents' abandonment of you to affect his love for you. Somebody should say amen right there. God has not let his love be affected, be influenced, be informed by your parents' behavior. God is not subject to peer pressure. Why not? Glad you asked me, Jamar. Because God has no peers. God has no peers. God's not looking down from heaven and saying, ooh, all the cool kids are really rejecting her. I better go along with this because I don't want them to reject me. No, God's not doing that. God's not subject to peer pressure. For our theologians, I need you to get this. For our theologians, the fact that you can understand God's command to honor your parents is by itself, is alone, on itself, evidence that God has not abandoned you. That's your shouting point right there. God has not abandoned you. Maybe everybody else has. Maybe there's nothing left. Maybe you are the exception that's proving the rule. Maybe that's you. This is the point you can stand on. This is the point that you can rest. If you have nowhere else to rest, this is where you do it. You rest here because the fact that you can even understand God calling you to do something means that God has not abandoned you in any way, in any shape, or in any form. And we need to rest here because we need to gather ourselves, because we need to press on to the next thing we need to do, and that is we need to address the bad. We acknowledge the good, we're going to have to address the bad. We need the courage to speak the truth without exaggeration or anger. This is in James 1:19 and 20. I'm pretty sure that somebody here can quote it. Let me just get you started. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. We're not talking, when we're talking about anger here, it's really important. We're not talking about feeling an emotion, right? You're going to feel anger. It's going to be a natural part of the human condition. In fact, if we talk through all the things that are going on in this congregation, we should be right to be feeling anger, right? But when we're talking about anger here, we're talking about dwelling in or harboring anger, giving it control over us. giving it free rein in our lives, not speaking to it the truth. Why is that important? Because giving anger control in our lives is going to lead to bitterness. Remembering, 2 weeks ago, Wes Hillman was here. Great sermon. If you missed it, go online, see it. All right? Very good sermon on when should I, he was asking the very hard question, when should I forgive? We're going to have to forgive our parents. We're going to have to forgive our parents even if we aren't asked for forgiveness. For some of us, our parents are gone. They're not going to come back and ask you for your forgiveness. They're dead or they're gone, right? Ephesians 4:32 gives us the model for forgiveness from God. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ God forgave you. So we get a model for forgiveness. We get a model for forgiveness from how God forgave us. It feels supernatural. It feels beyond our ability. This kind of forgiveness we can't understand on our own, and that's because it is. This is not the forgiveness of, don't worry about it. I'll get you back later. Right? That's not that kind of forgiveness. It's the supernatural forgiveness when we recognize how much we've been forgiven and we recognize what God has already done in our lives, and we come back to knowing that we need to forgive. Our motivation, our objective, our reason for addressing the bad, for speaking the truth in love, the courage to speak the truth, the ability to forgive, our motivation, our objective should be reconciliation. In the same way that we are working for reconciliation with anybody that we have a problem with. And this we find in Matthew 18 and also in 2 Timothy 2:25. Our objective is reconciliation, not revenge. Not, I'm going to get back. Not, oh yeah, you did me wrong. I'm going to settle the score. Watch. Maybe I'm going to be patient. Maybe I'm going to wait. Maybe I'm going to fuel myself with that anger that I've harbored, that anger that has now twisted me into bitterness. I'm going to get you. Oh yeah. You see, that doesn't feel supernatural. That feels very attainable. Supernatural is we're going to need to forgive even when we're not asked for it. The third practical thing that we need to do as we figure out how to honor our parents honestly is leaving space for change and grace for growth. One of the best ways we can honor parents that have hurt us or even hurting us now is to leave space for them to change. This is something that we need to do for our parents that we might not do for anybody else, and certainly not anybody else outside of our immediate family. You see, we leave the door just slightly ajar. When we're not able to walk through that door in the relationship that we need to have with our parents, that we want to have with our parents, we leave the door just slightly ajar. We don't slam it closed, nail it closed, put caution tape on it, and for good measure, set it on fire because nobody's going through that door again. No, we just leave it ajar. We know we can't walk through it right now. We know it's not going to be capable of walking through it right now, but we don't totally close it off. The uniqueness of our relationship, this is why. So why do we do that? Why do we do that for our parents when we might not do it for, the guy you met at the grocery store, your ex-BFF, right? The uniqueness of our relationship to our parents calls for a uniqueness in our response to our parents. This is a unique relationship. This is not a relationship that's the same as anyone else. Why? Because they had special tasks that they were supposed to do in our lives. And they did some of them, but they didn't do all of them. Or maybe they did some of them very, very poorly, right? The uniqueness in our relationship to our parents calls for a uniqueness in our response. We treat our parents different than we treat anybody else. We first allow for the possibility of reconciliation, to leave the door ajar. Some doors that are just left ajar, you never walk through again. Didn't happen. But we leave the possibility for reconciliation, and then we do what's in our power to do. We don't say, oh, you know what, it's all them. I'll come through that door when they express how sorry they were and how it was all their fault and how I was a perfect child and all that good stuff. Good luck. That's not what's really going to happen, is it? We need to do what's in our power to do, even if we do not know or we are not sure that they will ever change. That's still ours to do. This can mean waiting while God is working. This requires patience. We're on God's time schedule, not ours. And for naturally impatient people like myself, that's extremely frustrating. I want God to work it out in your life right now. Right now. Well, me, I'm going to take some time, but you, I want it done right now, right? Right? This takes patience. Does it feel supernatural? That's because it is. This is not something that just comes right out of us. This is something that God has to put in us, right? Now, I want to make a note for modern society. This is a note for us who live in this world, the world of social media, and particularly I want to speak to the rejection of toxic relationships. If you turn to social media, you're going to find many voices in many, many ways, encouraging you to love and protect yourself by cutting bad relationships out of your life, right? There is some truth to this line of thinking, but only some. Because this type of thinking, I'm just going to cut a toxic relationship out of my life, assumes that the relationships in question are essentially disposable. And furthermore, the definition of toxic often is anyone who questions you or your, oftentimes bad, decisions. Shouldn't have posted that. Oh, no, and don't tell me that. You might be toxic. Or anybody who makes you feel a certain way. And you know that way, but just in case, they're willing to help you, get a laundry list of all the ways that you could feel bad about somebody, and that might be the toxic. Take this quiz, and you'll figure out whether all the people in your life are toxic and need to be cut out, right? However, there's a problem here, and that is it leaves no room for the relationships we need. The relationships that we need, which are people who love us too much to continue to let you believe something that's untrue. That love you too much to allow you to believe something that's false about yourself, about the world you live in, about your condition. You need, I need, we need those relationships, and they should not be cut out. Because when we cut everybody out who's willing to question us, if we cut everybody out that is willing to question us, we are extremely vulnerable. We are extremely weakened. Parents are different than anyone else. Parents are unique. We are called to honor parents in a particular way, and therefore don't fit in the same category as your friends, your fellow workers, your boss, people in Starbucks, your BFF, your ex-BFF, your ex-BFF. Parents are different. And the uniqueness of a parent calls for a uniqueness in our response. So in conclusion, we're commanded by God to honor our father and mother. But for many of us, this is hard because our fathers and our mothers are sinners. Just like we're sinners, but they're sinners as well. And we bear the consequences of their sin, as sometimes do our children, as sometimes do our children's children. We are able to honor our parents by first acknowledging the uniqueness of our relationship, which God designed and God ordained. And we obey God's command to honor our parents by living and speaking the truth while leaving room for God's work in their lives and in our lives. It feels supernatural. It feels beyond us because it is. But God indwells us to obey him. Let's stand together.